Fellas, hear me out on this particular vlog entry. So it turns out that the Peg 37, this shoe, gets just about a weird rep as the Tempo Next Percent does, and due to the continued disputed claims of how well the Peg 37 rides and people's experiences with it based on the YouTubes, I've decided to give the pair of Peg 37s that I hate a second chance. That being said, I took it for a run, and I'm going to give you my assessment as well as just my overall thoughts on it in comparison to my previous pair of Peg 37s. Because if you've been following this channel, I've had this particular pair of Peg 37s were absolutely amazing, but this one not functioning nearly as well. So we're going to compare and contrast what's different about it, what I think can improve, and some hot fixes I have for the shoe. But before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on Strava, same name as the YouTube channel, Filip Latocha. And at 50 likes in this video, I'm going to put a picture of 3 Peg 37s, and then the highest rated one in the comment section below is the one I'm going to buy next, because there's a lot of research that still needs to be done in terms of the Peg 37, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of different specs on the shoe, which we'll get into, and yeah, that's kind of going to be the play. So 50 likes and I buy a new pair of Peg 37s for your entertainment. So without further ado, let's get into it. So basically with this Peg 37, we'll just go over general specs if you haven't heard them already for like the 1000th time. The shoe is about 10 ounces, 280 grams in size 10, which puts it pretty much at the heavier end of your daily trainers. It just does weigh about the same as the Tempo Next Percent, but has different features which will contrast it from that shoe, but we're not focused on the Tempo Next Percent, right? The offset of the heel to toe is about 10 millimeters, with the heel being, I believe it's about 22 millimeters or 24. I'll have the correction up here somewhere if I'm mistaken on that front. And that basically gives it this nice mid to forefoot striking precision of the shoe, which is what I think it's designed to do based on the technology in the bottoms, which we're going to get to now. So this foam here is just React all the way across, and basically it's a very stable ride. It's not the most comfortable thing I've run in, but it is definitely up there, and more or less it's just supposed to keep your foot stable, very comfortable. Kind of working like the Infinity React, where it's supposed to do its best to prevent injuries, but that's never like a guarantee, right? When we talk about the bottoms, the insole rubber is pretty comfortable as far as I'm concerned. We do have a lot of things we need to talk and dispute about this as we get there, but as you can see, it's structured in a way where it's very strategic for your foot strike, and of course this has been the standard Pegasus setup for the most part, as I understand it. Maybe there are a few variations in terms of depth of some lugs and like this inner area here, but for the most part this is the standard Pegasus insole bottom rubber. And then of course the same thing as most Pegasus series shoes have, they have this air pocket, air pod in there. For the male size shoe, I believe it's a 20 psi pocket. For the women's size, it might be slightly less. I think it's like 15 or 10. It does make a difference, so some people do choose to buy the women's size for that particular reason if they want less PSI or more. We'll have that number up here somewhere again, based on previous analytics I've had on this shoe. Let's talk uppers. This is where the shoe, I think, exceeds, in my opinion. And here, this upper is like this translucent opaque mesh, which is very stable, very flexible, and despite its rigidness, it's very good on your foot. It's not like, you know, busting your toes very well. Your foot is very snug, very stable in this particular upper. And because this upper is so durable, your feet do survive during the longer runs in this shoe, and in the past this has been the case, no problem whatsoever. So yeah, that's kind of cool on that end. The shoelaces, of course, are slightly asymmetrical to the outside of the shoe. The shoe has been constantly using this tongue now that the Vaporfly and other models of the shoe have been using in the past now for a few years, so I'm glad they made this iteration versus like the Peg 36 and the Peg 35 as I remember, and then the Peg Turbos from like 2-3 years ago at this point. The shoe collar, there's no Achilles pillow, but it is built in the lip of the shoe to be very snug, and not a lot of heel scratching or anything of that sort, so the shoe's pretty much excelling on that front. Okay, so now let's talk about my first run in this shoe after how many months? First, let's break down the history of my Peg 37 experience. So, if you've been following this channel, you know I'm in love with the City Run Pegasus 37. The first time I had this shoe, I was snapping like 6-minute miles because everything was just working really well with this shoe. To the point where 400 plus miles in, I've shredded it to the point where I can no longer run in this particular shoe. And I still owe you guys a video of me opening this shoe up, but there's still a lot I want to talk about before I definitely open it up. And that's why I'm trying to buy another pair so I can finally get to, breaking this thing down and we can start analyzing some of the technology that's being used in it. But more or less, there's so many subtle differences between this Peg 37 and this one. And one of those differences that I'm really leaning towards, again, I can't 100% prove this, but I have a very strong theory that this insole rubber is different between both shoes. And the reason I bring this up mostly is because during my research of the Peg 37 on Nike's custom site, I realized you can buy two different kinds of rubbers with your custom shoe. You can buy what I think is the traditional rubber and what I believe is the gooey rubber. And this the difference is pretty subtle because of based on how the feel of the shoe ultimately is. And the way I'm experiencing it, or have experienced it in the past, is that this gooey rubber is a lot more flexible and allows you to sink into that air pocket a lot more and get that snap that you're looking for while you're running. So it's my observation that this City Run might be using the gooey rubber, and the models that came afterwards, like this particular pair, are using the traditional rubber, and this is where we get to the issues that a lot of people may be experiencing with the newer Peg 37s they're buying. Not all of them, but for the majority of them. At least this ultraviolet white version of the shoe, totally. I think what's happening in this particular shoe is that because this rubber's traditional, it's a lot tougher. So it's good like if you want to take it for like a more gravel-based run, maybe like a training run in like the mountains or something where the road is a little bit loose, a little more gravel-like. It's gonna provide a rigid structure for it, but the shoe is not nearly as flexible as the previous Peg 37 was before. At least the City Run edition, right? So what's happening is the shoe feels flat. It's very, not very stable anymore, and this air pocket just doesn't seem to be doing its job. And I'm not sure if it's because it's like popped in this shoe, or just all of the combinations of this rubber, the shoe being just kind of built slightly differently, is just not cooperating, and it's creating this kind of not fun ride, which made me step away from this shoe the second time I bought it. That being said, there's a couple of hot fixes that we can implement that could potentially fix our issue. But first things first, let me describe my run today with this shoe. So, like I said, it just felt flat. It wasn't just doing any well. It didn't feel like the Pegasus 37 I had previously. And yeah, I had a bit of knee soreness afterwards. And I also had a little bit of pain in my hip, like towards the hip flexor, which typically doesn't happen. So, obviously, the shoe was just not performing well. And I was probably... what's the word I'm looking for? I was probably overdoing it, or overcompensating. That's the word I'm looking for. I was probably overcompensating to make this shoe work to push a 6:20, 6-minute mile type of pace. And it just wasn't worth it. The shoe is just not going to ride with you like the previous Peg 37 would. So again, let's talk hot fixes. There is one that I could do that I guess everyone can do on basically any of their shoes, and I've done this historically, and it's definitely worked in the past. The hot fix for this shoe, and I'll explain why, would be to just basically wash the shoe, and here's what could happen. So first and foremost, if you live in like a humid city like Chicago, for example, you're gonna sweat a lot. It's gonna just run down your legs, it's gonna get down your socks, and it's eventually gonna get on your shoes. So what's been happening with one of my old Vaporfly pairs that I used during like my virtual Chicago marathon is that I took a break from the shoe, and when I got back to it, it was just extremely stiff, and it was just very not flexible like the Vaporfly used to be. And after I washed the shoe, all that salt and whatever else was built up in it, the shoe was flexible again and it was rideable. So that might be the case of what could potentially help in this shoe, is because the shoe is clearly dirty. There could be definitely a lot of salt from training, putting 50 plus miles on it, and just, using it as a daily walker in some instances, where maybe washing it could break up the upper just enough for a little additional flex. Again, it's not 100% certain that it'll work, but it is a hot fix that I could implement. What it will do to the rubber, not 100% sure. Maybe it'll try to break down a little bit of the rigidness of the rubber, but I hope it doesn't. We should just keep this rubber structure just the way it is. But yeah, definitely washing your shoes every so often will help break down the salt and all that garbage that's in your shoe. So again, we'll wash the shoe, take it through another run, and we'll just see, we'll report back and just see ultimately how that goes. But this is kind of going to be the experiment with this Peg 37, and hopefully it works. It would be a real shame if I have to retire this shoe early just because it sucks. It won't be the first time I've done it, but you know, sometimes just the manufacturing just doesn't work out, but in a lot of cases, just sometimes the specs involved with the shoe just don't work out either. So again, if you like this video, please like it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like I said, 50 likes on this video, and I'm going to have 3 pairs of Peg turbos listed here that I'm willing to buy next, and whichever pair in the comment section gets the most upvotes is the one that I'm going to buy next and we're going to experiment with. So, and then of course follow me on Strava at Filip Latocha. That's where you'll see a lot of my updates daily, and Instagram and all those other social media things. So again, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you guys real soon.